People seem to love dogs. I don't really get it, but they do.
What do you mean, man? We're gonna lose viewers now because you don't like dogs.
I don't not like them. I don't dislike them.
Newsflash, everyone. Goose doesn't like dogs. Goose said
That's true. I don't like dogs. I don't dislike dogs.
He hates puppies.
Whoa,
that's it. We lost half our membership right there. No one's stopping this. Yeah. Whoa, guys. Whoa. Hello out there.
Carl. Yeah.
Carl, yeah. She can't see anything. All right.
Carl looks skinnier from the head up.
Yeah, Carl losing weight. There we go. I don't know. I don't think she's that much. She's not like much skinnier than she was before.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are you thinking right now, dog? Welcome back to, is this the fourth or fifth podcast we're doing?
I don't know. What's the point?
Yeah. Nice. So this is our post-Nationals podcast. Nationals was just in San Diego last week. And we're going to talk about Nationals and some reflections on Nationals. But first, we're going to get into a quick lightning round of Q&A that we have from Instagram. Vo, this would be where you could put in a cool graphic and some music with like lightning bolts and stuff. Or it'd be like, what's the name of that ESPN show? It's like Pardon the Interruption.
I don't know.
Where they're like, there's like a bunch of horns and like sound effects and stuff. Anyway,
like Mad Money, but for sports.
So lightning round, we're gonna do 1 minute timer, I think. So we're gonna talk about. Let's go from the start of our Instagram list here. A lot of people. We had 2 people ask questions about you eating donuts, so that won't even take a minute. How many donuts have you had, Goose, since Nationals?
I think I've had some of them. I just shared donuts, so there's some rounding to do. Maybe some like half.
We'll just say a shared. Let's say a shared donut counts as 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I've had 6 donuts.
Nice.
Fewer than probably most people expected.
Yeah. I think people like to, in this world, people like to sensationalize things and blow things out of proportion. And so you heard it here, folks. Goose had 16 donuts since Nationals. Okay.
Six donuts.
16 donuts.
60 donuts.
We have questions about natties. We'll talk about that. TiVo, our business partner and friend who is filming a lot of awesome content at Nationals, wanted to us address the skepticism that Pony had and realize after winning why these workouts work. Okay, so put me on a minute timer. I will tell a brief story about Pony.
Okay.
Ready?
Whenever you're ready.
All right. So if you do not know this, we trained Pony in the postseason this year. I was in charge of facilitating their workouts, and there was a bit of pushback based on how simple some of the exercises seemed. I won't get into specifics because that's kind of like how the secret sauce is made here. But the long story short, toward the end of the season, a lot of teams get caught up in trying to do too much work, and they end up burning themselves out. And those sort of results can be seen by how they perform at Nationals. And for them, they were already in very good shape from a subjective standpoint. The coaches and the captains both agreed with me that they didn't need any better conditioning. So we focused more on being explosive and powerful and spent a lot of time doing quality repetitions in practice for techniques and tactics. And it paid off, even though my anxiety levels were incredibly high through all of those universe points. But yeah.
Double game point performance.
Sure. Game point performance. They had some very good quality game point performances.
Timer.
Nice. Great. When should off season start? We can bang this out pretty quick. So this is like,
and this is coming from an elite level player who just played the Nationals.
Low Vereen. I don't know who that is.
His name's Logan.
Okay.
He
Oh,
plays in
Logan.
Zero.
Logan asks about when the offseason should start. This is up for opinion, I would say. There's not a definitive answer to this, but here, Goose, you give your 10-second version and then I'll give mine.
I mean, if you're not physically injured or mentally burned out, then start whenever you're ready. Like, don't start before you have any sense of motivation. I Opie Payne, most people are familiar with her. She texted me the day after she won the title this year with Fury. I was like, all right, when should I start? I was like, that's awesome. That's amazing. Claire Chastain did the same thing. These people who are relentless athletes want to get started immediately.
Yeah.
If you want to get started immediately, feel good, then get started immediately. There are some qualities of athleticism that go away very quickly that we would like you to preserve and not see diminish. And our program helps do that exact thing.
Yeah. That wasn't a 10-second answer, but it was good. Yeah, as long as you need. I think one of the pitfalls of people put in the post nationals week or 2 weeks is like they call them fat weeks. And I think that's a terrible sort of mindset to take. Like, I'm just going to throw my life away for a week. I don't know, being a champion and having that sort of mindset, I think, is a year-round thing. And you can see, like, with Claire and Opie, those are two very good examples of very strong players who are always taking this thing seriously. I'm not saying, like, don't have fun. Obviously, go eat 6 donuts or 16 if you're a goose and you just blow your life apart.
Those were shared donuts.
Yeah, shared donuts, 16 shared donuts. But yeah, take some time. And the thing about our program that's so great, not that I just want to plug the off-season program, is that if you are banged up and you're feeling run down and have overuse injuries, the off-season is designed to help work through those and to try to bring everything back to center and work on anything that's tight or feels too overstretched, or if you have any sort of tweaks, like things like that. We slow it down. We bring it back to center. We build a foundation for success for the upcoming season, a whole year away. So yeah, that was way more than 10 seconds, but
it's all right.
Boom, roasted.
Well answered.
Okay. How to recover from a concussion going back into Frisbee. So this one's pretty relevant because of what happened to your wife. And yeah. I think, wasn't there someone else? I think Sean Keegan might have gotten a minor concussion after he got blasted in the finals.
He might have, and so might have Eli Kearns.
Yeah, I think Eli might have gotten the worst of it, actually, based on, because he went like right into Sean's shoulder.
Right.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because those like traumatic brain injuries are rough and they take a while to get over depending upon the severity. But recovery from that, so Goose and I spoke about this a little bit because he asked for my advice for his wife about what she should do. And I think it's in your best interest to go see a neurologist who knows something about traumatic brain injuries to make sure that it's not bad. The last thing you want is swelling in your brain. And if you go to sleep with too much swelling in your brain, you might not wake up. So if it's pretty severe, you should get it checked out right away. And there are some things like exercise types of progressions you can do with cardio and things to kind of get back, and that might help alleviate some symptoms, or there's some supplementations that you can take in order to help. But the best bet in order for recovery from something like that, which can take weeks, it can take 6 weeks, it can take 8 weeks, depending on how severe it is, you should go see a neurologist. And if they feel like something is very wrong, they might even have you do like a CT scan and check to make sure your brain is all right.
Yeah. Severity is the key there, because if it's really mild, your symptoms may hardly even exist. But there's a cut camp coach this year who got 3 concussions in one game, mostly because the first one he didn't realize was a concussion. Then he kind of got one, and the third one he got really, really got his bell rung. And those things add up very quickly. And, he had like the mild personality change and, the full gamut of like the most severe version. And what that sort of person does is going to be completely different than somebody who's relatively asymptomatic, who can, maybe jump on an exercise bike and move their legs a little bit. pretty soon. Or also, I don't know about you, Chris. This is a little over a minute maybe, but maybe this is all the keto people out there saying this, but high-fat diets post-injury can tend to help brain recovery.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's something I don't really – I honestly, like, when it comes to traumatic brain injuries, like, they are just figuring out the severity and what these things can do very recently. So
and the protocol changes all the time.
Yeah. So they don't really know either. So I'm not going to a body of medicine that is on a new frontier. I would just rather be safer than sorry when it comes to the brain, because you don't exist without your brain, ladies and gentlemen. This whole reality that you've created for yourself, not to get too existential here, but if your brain and spinal cord aren't intact and working, then that doesn't matter.
Sure.
So take care of that. Cool.
Rest.
Yeah.
Rest and like blue light elimination.
Yeah.
Like,
if you have persistent headaches and any physical activity you do makes your headaches worse, go see somebody.
Yeah.
Next. EICR. So let's talk about muscle contractions, and then we'll pair this. So Zach Smith, our buddy on Voodoo, asked about understanding EICR. Not very clear, Zach, but we'll talk about it. And Fat American asked us, why do isometric before eccentric? So I'll try to combine both of those together, and I'm going to hold it to a minute. So get my time ready.
Okay.
Hold. Ready? Go. EICR, eccentric, isometric, concentric, and then rest. That's what those stand for. So we're talking about trying to match athletic actions and muscular actions where you have a preceding contraction that lengthens as you lower. So imagine me loading a cut. There's a pause where there's a transition that I'm taking potential energy and then I'm going to transform it into kinetic energy, which means loading energy and then propulsive energy. So I have the eccentric loading phase, the isometric pause where I change over to propulsive energy, and then that concentric is going to help deliver that energy. We do this in the order that with isometric first, because those are usually safer positions that cause less inflammation and help us really own positions. And a lot of what we do has to do with ownership of position and really being able to display our athleticism in the safest way possible. So that's why we do isometrics first, because they're the safest versions of the exercises and allow us to work on position first. Good. We'll say that. We'll say that's good for that one. Conditioning. So AJ Jakowski, conditioning and shit. Okay, great. So we'll talk about that. And then Sylv Washier wanted to know about conditioning in the off-season, treadmill versus grass. No access to grass, get home after dark. So we'll talk about conditioning from that perspective. Do you want to talk about that? You want to do 30 seconds and I'll do 30 seconds?
Sure. I'm going to go real high level.
Okay. I'll go not.
Okay.
Ready? Let me time you. Go.
Real high level. Your coaches here have a very good understanding of the physical adaptations and qualities that we're looking for in an ultimate athlete. And that includes conditioning. So when we think and talk about and program conditioning, we're doing all of it to achieve the sort of adaptations that we want. Sometimes that's at the heart, sometimes it's at the legs, sometimes it's aerobic enzymes and the like. But our conditioning is designed to target exactly those things without doing anything extra.
You're over 30 seconds, but man.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, that was like 40 seconds. Now Carl's upset.
You still get 30 seconds.
Okay. All right. So we'll do the simple version with Carl here. Okay. So I get 30 seconds to talk about conditioning without. So mine's more based on the constraints. So if I have a treadmill only and it's dark when I get out. Okay.
Sure. Good.
So tempo running, we're talking about using a treadmill and conditioning in the off season. I'm not as concerned about using the specific surface because, like you were saying, like if it's dark or it's cold, you're not going to be able to do that. Treadmill is not great because it's a belt that you're trying to keep up with instead of actively pushing and extending and putting force into the ground. So treadmill is, what you have to do if you only have a treadmill. If you have some space, you can also do different types of A running drills because you're still going to get the same frequency and the similar forces in an upright position. And if you do about 30 contacts with like a high A run, that's about 60 yards. So if you had room to get like 50 or 60 of those in a row, that could be a pretty good analog to running a tempo sprint.
You almost did an entire minute.
Okay. Well, I had Carl here.
And the last thing to add on, we should have given Carl got 30 seconds. That's why you're allowed to go over. And the last thing I want to add is just like, in general, we try to get our athletes off their feet a little bit more in the off season since they've had a lot of impact through the course of the season. And there are some exercises and adaptations that we're looking for that just don't require the impact. And so why do it if you don't need to?
Yeah. Or you could even run like in the sand, or you could run barefoot in grass, or we're not necessarily going after the specific speed adaptations with the tempo. It's just something that's close enough to top speed. And it's also something that's going to be pretty aerobic and will help kind of build a more robust.
But some of these people may not even be talking about tempo runs, right? Like they could be talking about cardiac output if they're in phase 1.
Right.
Or maybe aerobic intervals if they're in phase 2.
Yeah. So the rule of thumb for off season, especially early off season for us, is to try to stick with lower impact types of activities. So you could swim, even though it's tough to have a heart rate monitor that works in a pool. You could do elliptical, bike, things like that. If you're not super beat up and your lower legs and your legs are accustomed to running, you could do that. But that's usually last on the list for recommendations from me. Okay. So we're going to try to combine. Actually, you know what? Try to do the other one here. Let's see what we got here.
Got the injuries one.
Yeah, we're going to combine that into is it bad at JD Hastings? Is it bad if my abs stay on for 4+ hours? Might need to call the same doctor that you saw about your concussion. Is the Tyler Falco wants to know if the Morpheus band is worth the purchase.
In my opinion, yes. I don't use it for the exercise monitoring, but I do use it for the recovery readings in the morning. I feel as though the Morpheus readings are substantially more accurate than the Whoop readings, based upon how I feel and the output that it tends to have, the correlation therein. And then the Morpheus app does provide you for that day, based upon your recovery, guidance for which heart rates to remain within based upon the sort of work that you're trying to do, whether it's like aerobic work, recovery work, really high intensity work. And that can be very helpful. We give you guidelines for that sort of thing in the different conditioning methods that we employ, but those ranges are ranges for a reason, and a lot of that has to do with it varies from person to person. It varies from that person day to day. So the Morpheus helps you dial those things in.
Cool.
You can use a chest strap with that app, Morpheus app.
Got it. Fat American asks why kettlebell deadlifts over trap bar. Trap bars eventually in the program. Kettlebell deadlifts are easier to maintain position of your rib cage because you're internally rotated with your arms. That's the short answer.
That's a good answer.
And we like abs. So we're going to combine the rest of the questions into a bit of a reflection period for Goose. So let me try to set the stage here by going through some of these. One of them, Lucky Bravo, wanted to know how you're so good looking, but we can include that in your nationals experience. It's one of these historic questions of the world. How is Goose so good looking? ridiculously good looking. Let's see here. Nathan Vassar wanted us to talk about, y'all should talk about some injuries all y'all have had and what mentality you were in. So I'm guessing Nathan is from Texas or Tennessee or something like that. I do not know, but all y'all. Joel, Ben, Joseph wanted to know about natties. So we're just about to talk about that. Sylv Washier also wanted to know about lessons we learned from the season and any advice on planning ahead. That will be looped into this. Yeah, I think we can cover all of our bases by talking about that. So we'll turn it to you, Goose, and we'll kind of let the rest of the podcast here be about your reflections on training yourself for the year, your reflections on training with Ring and the Flyers, and then your specific reflections on Nationals.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, historically, I've done some training from designed by other coaches, and I even, as I went along and read more and more, engrossed myself in material, started a program for myself. And a lot of what I was seeking was obviously the classic things of run faster, jump higher, but I'd been battling back pain for a really long time that was intermittent. It would just like lock up and have back spasms. I was trying to figure out a way to end that. And this is the first year of, for a full year of doing game point performance stuff. I guess you could say we'll call it stuff training.
It's definitely stuff.
And I went through the entire year with no back pain, no seizing up of my back, no back spasms. And that's never happened before. So that in and of itself is huge, not just because of the downtime, but because of the mental frustration involved with that sort of injury, where you just can't do anything for a week. That in and of itself is a pretty significant testament to the efficacy of the training. Leading into Flyers and Ring, I was in shape earlier in the year than I had ever been, and gradually just got more and more in shape. And a lot of that had to do with just layering in different types of conditioning.
So talk about if you can, Goose, don't mean to cut you off. Could you talk about what you used to do for conditioning and what you think was good about that and bad about that? Because there are definitely some benefits to being able to do what you were doing with 150 shuttles. But
yeah, I mean, really my conditioning was limited to playing, which, you do get a certain conditioning effect from playing. And then a lot of changing direction drills, whether they be 300 shuttles, 150 shuttles. Sometimes I would try to get a little bit more creative and make it where it wasn't always 180 degrees change of direction. So I would turn it into triangles. And then goose cones, as it became known, this 10 cut sort of progression of an extension of a 5-10-5. They were good in that, some of the qualities you need in ultimate are in there. Like, you need to have a lot of eccentric strength to decelerate quickly and absorb that force to get ready to go the other way. But holy cow, was it taxing on my system. Like, I would train really hard in the past, whether it's to try to make Team USA, successfully make Team USA. And I would try to do shuttles or goose cones or something on the off days from lifting. And I would just get worn down because they're such taxing exercises. And I still never felt like there was only one time that I felt like I was in super good shape as a result of doing those things. And it was because I was training 6 days a week. And every few days I'd have to quit because I felt like I was going to get sick. I was essentially overtraining because those methods are just so hard on you. Since then, I stopped doing those things. I haven't done a lot of shuttles in the last year. And, without getting into all the details of what the exercises looked like, we're using all the methods that are in our programming, like cardiac output, aerobic power intervals, high resistance intervals, high intensity continuous training, things of that nature. And people have seen
running sprints that look like what you do in the game and not 1 minute of running back and forth, which doesn't happen.
Yeah, tempo runs, like basically a lot of things that are much less taxing on your nervous system and have a lower eccentric load, and something that actually helps propel your recovery from your previous hardworking day, whether that was lifting or a field workout. And so instead of just beating myself down a little bit more every day, it'd be like beat myself down, build myself up, forward, and this super compensation pattern. So
I don't want to like burst anyone's bubble that's listening to this that's going to be doing our program for the year, but you will end up doing shuttles. I'm sorry. Like you might all feel relieved that you're not going to have to do like 150 and 300 shuttles, but I'm sorry, my friends.
You're not going to do it all year though.
Yeah. There are going to be a few weeks a year, maybe, like 6 weeks a year, where you're going to be doing stuff like that. And it's going to suck a lot, but it's not going to be around when you need to be competing because like Goose was saying, there is a lot to playing yourself into shape. Now, that does not mean that you should not be ready to play. Like I think a common pitfall of ultimate players is that they just won't play or they won't run until they start playing again. And then like, oh, hey, I'll just play myself into shape, which works until it doesn't work, right? So if I try to play myself into shape and then I get hurt and I keep getting hurt, then that leads to the end of a lot of people's careers. And some people might have been able to be very great players. I know of a few that trained poorly that I played with in college that were worlds players that had to stop playing when they were 21 because they just completely blew themselves apart just with misguided training and not training correctly. So we're trying to help everyone avoid all of these problems that have occurred in the past. Yeah. I wish you had I wish we had like the Elite HRV or the Bioforce for you when you were doing all that.
Oh man, it would have just been trash.
Yeah, you would have been trashed all the time.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of intuitive recovery things like eating well and getting in like cold water.
Right.
And
you were literally getting sick, like the main way.
Yeah. I was sleeping. I would sometimes like wear compression tights and stuff like that because I just didn't know any better that there needed to be some sort of balance in the week of my training, and so I just pushed hard.
Just hammer yourself. Just bash your head into the wall. Bah, bah,
and the thing about this year is I certainly trained as much, but I just felt better the whole time. Yeah.
What a concept. Like let's So the big underlying principles of game point performance are that what we provide is supportive to what you're going to be doing on the field, but it's not going to make you better just because you can do a trap bar deadlift with heavy weights. Like there are plenty of people that are strong at trap bar deadlifts that aren't great ultimate Frisbee players. So that's what we're trying to do is offer a supportive stimulus to what you're doing, but that doesn't detract from you playing. So if you're super sore and you're not recovered and you're trying to run at practice and you're running slower at practice or you can't play, then how are you getting any better at playing?
Good question.
Yeah, man. These are the questions that we have the answers for. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just listen to what we have to say. We're here to help you. I promise. We're not just saying these things to be provocative and be different. Like we are certainly different, but we're looking out for your best interest. And we want everyone, if everyone thinks this way and trains this way, then we'll elevate the game to a point where it's on the same level athletically as any professional sport. And a lot of those professional sports
I experienced last year.
Sorry,
one of the other things I experienced this past year that I'd lost, I guess you could say, is like the feeling of being on my hips. Like just really having a lot of control over my momentum at any time, like whether it's time to generate it, break inertia, or change direction. Like I'd gotten very strong doing a lot of the other training that I had done. And I'm sure that, fed into this sort of feeling, but I had lost that feeling, whether it's from doing all these external rotation oriented things, like a bunch of miniband things that I didn't really need to be doing, or whatnot. But like this programming that is in search of proximal stability, this sense of being like having stability through your midline, it really made a huge difference for me.
Right.
I dunked on a lot of people this year, and I felt like my vert had been going down, and it's gone back up.
Yeah, and so position is a strange thing, and we talk about position a lot, but when it comes to how your bones, so your bones are hard so when you talk about physics, your bones are hard surfaces in which you can send force into, and then you get a return of force or pressure. So when you talk about the position of your pelvis, if you are in a position where you can accept force, so say that like you're eccentrically oriented with how your pelvis is set up, then changing direction and stopping might be very easy for you. And a lot of people make a career on this, but those same people might not be super fast in a straight line because they're not set up to be able to be propulsive. So we want to try to give you a better foundation or middle ground so that you can both load and explode, like load into a hip and then unload out of a hip, instead of always being in this loaded position of your hip, which is kind of what you're describing is what you used to be.
Right.
So if you're always able to accept load, you're going to be super solid when it comes to like stopping on a dime. But when it comes to being able to like deliver high outputs in a straight line, that's why you ended up with like back type of injuries, because you tried to have an orientation of your pelvis that was putting your hip flexors and back into a power position. And they were trying to deliver pretty much exclusively the amount of force that you needed to go forwards. And then you had failure.
Right.
Yeah. It's because physics, science, gravity, angular momentum.
What are the other questions? We had one about injuries, right?
Yeah, people wanted to know about, we wanted to talk about your training experience for the year. I jumped in and derailed us a couple times. And then we wanted to talk about injuries, playing with injuries. And I guess you can just tie that into your nationals experience because those things kind of are going hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, so I didn't have any like muscular injuries, anything like that. Like I said, one of the injuries that I had reoccurring was the back. We've worked through that. The breathing warm up, I think, had a lot to do with that. But as well as other things. But yeah, I developed a cyst in my throwing wrist due to some of the training that I was doing, and it was like kind of silly in retrospect because it wasn't athletic development sort of training. It was, I would go out to the beach to do a lot of my conditioning, and after the conditioning, I always like to spend some time throwing the disc so I can practice throwing while tired, and I'll throw either with someone, or if I'm training by myself, I'll throw at stationary targets. And then just for fun, do what?
I just kind of coughed and said, loser.
Yeah, no friends. And then I also just like enjoy being on the beach and doing some freestyling. And so sometimes I'd find myself for 30 minutes, sometimes an hour out there just throwing these really high velocity, short range backhands so that I could do like body rolls and silly stuff that people see me do on Facebook and Instagram. And that stuff is fun, but it's also violent. And if you do it enough at the high enough volume, then I mean, now looking back, it's no surprise that I developed this system at wrist. So unfortunately, it came to culmination 2 weeks before nationals to an extent that I could not throw a backhand at all. So I went to go see a doctor, was hoping to get any interventions that they saw that were suitable. But I immediately started to shift my throwing practice into the only thing that I could really think of, which is throwing offhanded as much as possible. So I didn't want to go into nationals feeling uncertain. I knew that I would probably enter nationals with an unknown factor of whether or not partway through I'd be able to throw with my dominant hand. But I was going to go in as confident as I could be throwing with my non-dominant hand and practicing pivoting on that hand and doing what I needed to do. to address that. I know that's like a sports specific almost sort of injury approach, but that's the only injury that I had, and it was self-inflicted. But the mentality there is I know that I can go be a receiver, and my job at that point is just to be diligent with the disc.
Right. I think in terms of injuries, a lot of times, especially if you're able to rehab from an injury or come back to, return to play type of thing, a lot of times you're dealing with some psychological distress that is going to impact your ability to perform. So you have to be able to overcome that, if it's seeing someone in a therapy type of setting or context that might be helpful for some people. Just having a belief in yourself and a confidence in building that again, which is a good reason to go out and really make sure your left-handed or your off-handed throws feel good. A lot of times when we have athletes, we had several athletes from Pony that were dealing with some mild hamstring issues leading into the off season or leading into nationals. So the way that we helped them was building confidence through actual short sprints and making sure to address mechanics. So what Goose is talking about a particular overuse injury that developed from something that was mechanics driven, which you need to be able to freestyle, be able to do that type of snapping wrist motion where you break the wrist like that. But over and over again, you talk about something that isn't really mechanically efficient, that you overuse and you put a lot of volume into. Oftentimes, if you don't grade the exposure and you don't build up the volumes over time gradually, or you just in a macro sense just do too much, you end up with some type of failure, or in your instance, a cyst built up. Because if you pull on bones and ligaments for too long and you keep stretching them, then oftentimes you get this sort of offshoot of connective tissue that can fill with fluid. And that's like, if anyone's ever heard of like a Baker's cyst or these cysts in your wrist, I know they have specific names, but and not coming to mind. But that type of pressure and direction continually over and over again can actually end up jacking up your joints like that.
Yep.
So yeah, that sucks that you had to deal with that. But overall, how did you think about your playing? And
yeah, Thursday. So I guess to kind of tie it all in, saw a doctor literally a week before nationals, and was able to get like a once a day ibuprofen and like a sublingual turmeric concoction. And hopefully that was going to cut down on inflammation in general. But then I went to see a hand surgeon sort of doctor on Tuesday and got a cortisone shot. They were able to see and identify the cyst. They said it would take a few days to take effect and to help, and I knew that, which is why I was trying to get it done on Thursday, the week before. So by the time that 2 days passed and nationals was starting on Thursday, I was not able to throw right-handed, not even short range. It was too painful and felt strange, especially because there's some new fluid in there. But I played well on Thursday. I think I had like a turnover, throwing turnover, and but was able to cut well. Felt great being in the environment, training in the environment that I was going to be competing in, because I live here in San Diego. And there's a lot of merit to being able to train in the competitive environment that you want to play in.
And time zone.
Yeah, time zone as well, for sure. So I thought that went really well. Like Thursday, played well, did everything I was asked to do. Friday, same thing, except for my wrist started to feel much better. I was able to throw some backhands. And then by the time Saturday rolled around, which was semifinals, I could throw, full field backhands and forehands. Generally, couldn't throw hammers very well, but everything else was back. So it's overall pretty pleased with my play. With the ring, I had a pretty specialized role on the team, and that was just to play offense and be a continuation cutter and occasionally be a deep cut outlet. And I think I did my role well. Did have one turnover in the semifinals that will bug me for a while. It was a end zone turnover where I tried to throw a quick around flick. Somehow the front edge of the disc ended up being down, which is strange because then I throw that throw a lot. It's one of my strongest, most practiced throws, and I flubbed it. It could have been the wrist. It's hard to say. Like, I certainly don't have as much feeling in the mechanics of it with 2 weeks of non-practice leading up to nationals and then, doing it that day. So I do have regrets about that because we ended up losing in the semifinals, for those of you who don't know, by 1 point to Revolver. So in some ways I can look back on that and say, well, that would have been that 1 point, but we had our other chances as well. But yeah, I felt physically very prepared. There was one huck in that game that nut threw me. That was like a 71-yard huck or something like that. And if I hadn't done as much training as I had done, I wouldn't have caught it because he really threw it far.
Hashtag frontside mechanics.
Frontside mechanics. Yeah, there's some decent clips of me really throwing those arms forward.
Yeah, vote. Put that clip in.
Yeah.
Also, feel free to put Sean Keegan's run down. Also,
that's right.
That was one of the guys with the tweaked hamstring.
Confidence.
It didn't really look much like a tweaked hamstring to me.
Didn't to me either. Yeah. So that's my nationals experience. It was great. It being in San Diego in general. Like, I think everyone loved that weather, all that stuff. But and it's cool having all my friends come into town to come visit me, and then also want to play in that Frisbee tournament.
What are you looking forward to being able to do this next year? Like, what do you want to do differently with training? Who are you going to play for? Do you even know where you want to play yet? Are you still going to do what you're doing with Raleigh?
I probably will not play with Raleigh. This is not like an official announcement or decision. It's just, it is far. It's almost the farthest team I could choose to play for in the country. One of the reasons I chose to play with them this year is having lived in Raleigh last year and been a part of their earning a Worlds bid, I certainly wanted an opportunity to play with them at Worlds. And it's just a really fun, energetic, hardworking, talented team. And it's hard to pass up an opportunity to play with teams like that when those opportunities are actually kind of rare. So I'll probably play somewhere more local if possible. I've already reached out to some of the Condors folks to see if they want to play here in San Diego or what practices look like for that. But yeah, I would expect that this next year we'll probably travel a little bit less and that I will probably have a very different role on a very different team.
Until you get recruited by Pony. Hey man, you can stay in my room.
That would literally be the farthest team away.
Some team in like Portland, Maine.
Right.
Yeah. The Portland Bears. Play for the Portland Bears.
Yeah.
Cool. So you heard it here, folks. Unofficial announcement. Goose is retiring from Ultimate Frisbee. Put that as the cold open.
Right.
Where will Goose play this season? Stay tuned for the next 65 minutes of two morons babbling into microphones.
I will say also in summation of this year, I had a goal of winning 5 championships because those are all the championships I was like participating in. And in order, those were Beach National Championships, the World Ultimate Club Championships, the Masters version of that. Oh, wait, no, the AUDL Championships. I don't know, it kind of blends with those two. Masters, World Club Championships, and obviously USAU National Championships. Got 2 for 5. 2 for 5. Next year, there'll be fewer opportunities. But, yep. Those are the things I'm training for. Nationals and maybe the AUDL Championships. We'll see. I'll probably want to play beach. Honestly, I love beach. Beach is so fun. My body is not built for beach. Not particularly tall.
I am amazing on the beach.
But I've learned how to play it and I love it.
That's about it, though. I haven't played
sometime this year. We're going to be teammates sometime this year. We're going to play some beach.
You gonna throw me a goal and I'm gonna spike it on somebody, and then people are gonna be like, "We don't do that anymore." And I'm gonna be like, "Sorry, I stopped playing 9 years ago."
I've lost touch.
Yeah, cool.
All right. So what's our cold close here?
Is that such a thing? Did you just come up with that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we have a great segue, so I might as well just roll into. Do we just say like, I don't know what the point was, and then cut off?
No, no. I hope that by now Vo has just cut this off and he ended it like he just recycle a clip of Carl talking or like dancing, and I think you're good for pretty much ever.
I mean,
And for
the dog,
eternity, you could just
people seem to love dogs. I don't really get it, but they do.
What do you mean, man? We're gonna lose viewers now because you don't like dogs.
I don't not like them. I don't dislike them.
Newsflash, everyone. Goose doesn't like dogs. Goose said
That's true. I don't like dogs. I don't dislike dogs.
He hates puppies.
Whoa.
Whoa, that's it. We lost half our membership right there. Carl's upset. Carl takes it personally.
Well, that's because Carl should take it personally.
Because Carl should shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah, she almost went on a little tantrum there, but
I heard.
Now she's sleeping. Now she's sleeping in the other room. Yeah, that could have been bad. Cool. Well, I'm gonna stop recording now.
Okay.